So, a thin blue line, a thin blue line. You know, I heard that phrase before growing up, every now and again. I didn't hear it as much as I hear it now, and there most certainly was never a symbol of it. I mean, the first time I actually saw the symbol of it, which was a couple of years ago, I was actually looking for holsters on Amazon. I think it's called Outlaw Holsters or something. If you go on Amazon, the guy's got all these in the waistband holsters, American flag holsters, We the People holsters, the Spartan Come and Take It holster, Punisher holster, right? But there's a majority of these American flag holsters, and they got the thin blue line one, and they got like ones that are in OD green for the people who serve in the military. Um, but the thin blue line one, it took me a while to recognize what that was. I was like, why is it? I was like, okay, it's a flag and it's got a blue line on it. I was like, I don't get it. And then I finally got it. I was like, oh, a thin blue line. I was like, oh, I get it, right? And so, why am I talking about the thin blue line flag? Well, apparently there was this big hoopla down there in Maryland where a boy and his father made basically a wooden thin blue line flag, right? Black outline, black flag with the blue line. Now, I did some research looking at the flag code because I saw a comment that somebody said that you're not supposed to be able to redesign the flag or change the flag in any way that goes against the flag code. Like, all the stuff like the flag is not supposed to hit the ground. The flag is not supposed to get wet. The flag is not supposed to, it's supposed to be disposed of a right way. Like, the flag code is actually a lot longer and a lot more extensive than I thought a flag code was going to be. Like, there's all type of rules, like how you handle the flag when you bring it down to half staff, or what is it, half staff, half mast? I guess it's only half mast if you're on a boat. But how you're supposed to deal with a flag at a baseball game or a sporting event, right? They got all these different rules, right? And I just skimmed through it. I could not find the actual part where it said, or if it said, that you can't manipulate the flag. I think that's kind of a rule that everybody ignores in terms of the American flag. I mean, hell, Captain America is manipulating the flag if you want to take it there. I mean, you name it. I mean, people put American flags on everything, right? Even though the flag code basically says that you're not supposed to. I mean, I've seen, Chuck Taylor's, Converse sneakers that were, American flags. I mean, I don't think it's something that's enforced. So I get the point that the person was trying to make, basically saying that the cops were breaking the law by, with this whole symbolism of the thin blue line. But I just don't think that's going to hold water. I just think that's a weak argument. I mean, everybody kind of manipulates the American flag in some way, shape, fashion, or form, and they throw the American flag on a whole bunch of stuff. And most people would, say that that's patriotic, that it's not anything that's actually denigrating the flag. But I get the point, right? Because it's like, if Colin Kaepernick is denigrating, America or the flag or police officers or troops, right, which is bullshit in my opinion. He's trying to bring awareness to police brutality. But, you have those people who want to see it how they want to see it. But I'm just saying, if Colin Kaepernick is doing all of that, like these people are saying, then, the point being that, well, what are the cops doing? They're actually denigrating the flag if they're breaking the flag code, and the flag code says that the, American flag is not to be, alternate or what's the word that I'm looking for? Alternated, right? So the thin blue line flag, like I've seen this whole thin blue line thing thrown around. I do believe that when it comes to this rise in white supremacy and rise in hate crime, I do believe that the thin blue line flag, or just the whole Blue Lives Matter thing, has been co-opted by white supremacists. As I've stated before, 93% of all law enforcement are Caucasian. That's what the demographics are of police officers in America. Only 3% are black. And I've already stated that there's many white people in America who look at police officers as the enforcement arm of the system of white supremacy. You know, they look at police officers, and again, historically, that is what police officers' roles were, right? Officer, overseer. That's what police officers were, to keep the niggas in check, to keep the slaves in check, to keep the blacks in check. And they've been that, for a very long time. The police officers and Ku Klux Klan members, especially in the Deep South, were synonymous with one another. That is historical fact. So if black people are running around feeling some type of way about police officers, and they don't trust police officers, they have every right not to trust police officers. Again, based on the historical context of the role of police officers, white police officers, as it pertained to their relationship to the black community. That does not mean every single police officer in America, but it does mean that there has been a long-standing culture of racism against the black community facilitated by law enforcement officers. That is historical fact. Now, the flag. What do I think about the flag? White people love their symbolism, in my opinion. They love the freaking Confederate flag. They love the Confederate, statues. This whole thin blue line thing. They love throwing up the okey doke sign, right? The white supremacist okey doke sign. They got all type of, symbolism. I mean, America is full of symbolisms of white supremacy. The ironic part is freaking the Washington Monument clearly isn't a symbol of white supremacy, as the Washington Monument is in the shape of what? An obelisk, which comes from where? Ancient Egypt. The land, as Herodotus called it, the land of the blacks, ancient Kemet. I always found that ironic. Even the obelisk that they have, where is that? It's sitting in front of the Vatican, right? I definitely think that, you had, it's like Planet of the Apes when it comes to, white people and black people sometimes, because, I definitely think that there was ancient information, ancient knowledge that was taken out of Egypt, whether you want to say it came out of the burning library of Alexandria or whatever. And a lot of that stuff is sitting in the library that they got locked off, over there in the Vatican City. But that's a whole different, theory conversation. But it's just funny, like when you look at the symbolism, even when it comes to the Freemasons. The Freemasons, if you go to the Freemason building in Philadelphia, they have go on Google, just type in Freemason building, and they got an ancient Egyptian room. Like, why are you rocking the ancient Egyptians? What's so special about the ancient Egyptians? Why on the back of the dollar they have the basically what is the Eye of Horus, and you got that whole the pyramid with the big ass eye on it, like it's damn Sauron from freaking Lord of the Rings or some shit, right? So the all-seeing eye, right? So there's all type of cryptic shit that goes on, but I'm not here for the cryptic stuff, right? That most people are just, they're not even aware of it. They don't even know what symbols they're, running around sporting. But, the whole thing with the Blue Lives Matter and the, when you, like, they're having this whole thing in Maryland, you got, one congressperson or whoever, mayor, I think the mayor, he's like sending out tweets, basically, I don't know if he was defending it or against it. There's like all this back and forth, right? And, as a black American, we speak white people. You know what I mean? Like, we speak white people code. Like, that's why black people get so easily triggered, because We already know white people code, and it's just hilarious how a lot of white people don't know that black people already know white people code. Like, we already know white people code. Like, when we it's just what it is. Like, all this, oh, we support law enforcement officers, and all that. Yeah, you support law enforcement officers because you don't empathize or sympathize with black people. You support law enforcement officers when these cops are basically fulfilling their historical role as keeping the niggas in check. That's when you see these white people come up and they try to, tie it to patriotism and what America is really all about, and, apple pie and baseball and all that stuff, right? But, black people see right through that shit. We see the low key, subtle bigotry and racism. And again, when it comes to racism, your mileage may vary. You got racists that are going 100 miles an hour, and you got people who are borderline, just, they're just right at the cusp of racism. They're only going 5 miles an hour, but they have their biases. And then you got everything else in between. You got your people going 25, you got your people going 65, you got your people going 85, and then you got your full out Ku Klux Klan, I hate niggers, 100 mile an hour racist. It's not like every white person that's racist is like just full blown foaming at the mouth racist. But I definitely think that the context in which people are raised in America creates these sort of racial biases. And I think the biggest fear of white people is, number one, guilt, white guilt over what happened when they learn about the history of their ancestors, and the fear of loss and the fear of losing their position or position of power, whatever benefits they feel that are coming to them. And then lastly, the fear of retaliation, which is that one day black people will do unto white people as white people have done unto black people, right? So because of those various degrees or levels of fear, white people are never going to do anything to empower black people or, pull black people up to their level, in terms of, actually truly speaking about equality, and black people are pretty much done with the whole, equality through social equality. We don't give a fuck about social equality. Oh, you can go to this bar now. You can use the same bathrooms. You can drink from the same water fountains. And then it's like, nah, nigga, what's up with the motherfucking money? What's up with the jobs and the opportunities and everything else that allows you to live the comfortable lifestyle that you live? That's always the area in which, when it comes to racial equality, everything falls apart and it fails. When it comes down to the tangibles, nobody wants to have that conversation. When Martin Luther King tried to have that conversation, he was assassinated. He was killed. You go and you look at the speeches that Martin Luther King was giving, it wasn't on the kumbaya tip. I think that, Malcolm X had taken bits and pieces of what he saw of Martin Luther King, and Martin Luther King had taken bits and pieces of what Malcolm X had said. But Martin Luther King was the one that the system of white supremacy bet on, because he was the one talking on that spiritual white Jesus stuff about everybody, we're all God's children, we'll hold hands, kumbaya, all that other stuff. And as soon as he started switching his tune and he started talking about, the economic part, then they were like, oh, nigga, you got to go. And then that's when he was taken out. Now, I'm not getting into all the conspiracy theories. People got all crazy conspiracy theories around Martin Luther King, just the same way they got crazy conspiracy theories about the, John F. Kennedy and the assassinations of both. But, when it comes to the whole, the whole people running around saying Blue Lives Matter, it's like nobody was saying Blue Lives Matter until, after Black Lives Matter came out. And it was kind of, it's an asshole thing to do. It undermines people who are trying to bring awareness to a problem. And like I said in my previous videos, I think a lot of white people are full of shit because, as I stated before, Beto O'Rourke goes up there and basically says law enforcement is going to kick in your door to take your guns. And then white people are ready and willing to shoot law enforcement, cops, government agents, whatever. They're ready to gun them down, to protect their Second Amendment rights. But any other time, it's Blue Lives Matter. We support our law enforcement officers, and they doing all that bullshit where they throw like little parties and parades, and they got the little kids out there that they say, I want to be a cop when I grow up, Basically, I want to be a race soldier when I go up. That's what black people hear. Again, I'm not saying every cop is freaking racist. But I'm not the biggest fan of police officers. I'm not the biggest, especially your regular police officers on the beat. I don't think they're the sharpest tools in the drawer. You're talking about a bunch of people that, went to high school, graduated high school, immediately went into police academy. They're not worldly people. They're not well-versed people. They're not educated people. They live in a small town. They probably come from a long line of cops. And they bring their own personal biases into how they police, because they're human like everybody else is human, right? So if they got biases, it's not like they're going in there like RoboCop. Like, they're not. They're a white police officer in Mississippi, I can pretty much bet that he's going to have a different interaction with black people than a police officer that before he became a police officer went to a more mixed high school, was on the football team, had black friends, went to mixed parties and everything. That's a completely different cop than the cop that's out there living in Whiteville, USA, and doesn't know anybody who's not white. That cop is going to have completely different interactions with most minorities than the other cop that I'm pointing out. And like I said before, white people's insensitivity is what really pisses black people off. It's not a matter of political correctness. I see white people trying to conflate shit. They go out here and they'll be like, where's Black Lives Matter? They'll have like a black guy that's like dual wielding, freaking shooting at the cops, with 2 Desert Eagles or something like that. And they'll be like, hey, look, he's shooting at the cops. Where's Black Lives Matter? And it's like, nobody's talking about cops shooting at, a black guy that's shooting back at the cop. I expect the cop to shoot back. It's like, well, you shouldn't have been shooting at the cop. It's like that black guy that was down there in, where was he? I think he was in Chicago. And what happened in Chicago? He pulls out like he's got a permit, and he gives it to the cops, and then he freaks out and he tries to run away from the cops, and then he tries to pull his gun out as he's running away from the cops, and the cops take him out. It's like, well, what were you doing? You didn't have a permit, and then you freak out, and then you run away, and then you pull the gun out, and it's like, yeah, they're gonna shoot you. So it's like nobody, and I think half the cops in that were black themselves. So I'm like, I hate when people try to, they try to conflate shit and make a straw man argument and try to claim that people who are trying to bring awareness to some fucked up shit that's going on out here are what's the word that I'm looking for? That they're just radical and they're just crazy. Like I said, white people don't really give a fuck about cops. And why am I going blank? I'm losing my train of thought because I got so many thoughts entering my mind. What was I gonna say? I was gonna say white people only get mad. Well, here's the thing. They'll talk about how in the media, right? The media doesn't cover certain shit, right? The media doesn't cover hate crimes towards white people or something like that, which I don't really think is a freaking hate crime. I think most of those crimes are economic. Do I think that a black guy will have an extra amount of anger or animosity towards a white person if they get a white person in a compromised position? Possibly so. But do I think that, you have black people running around here looking for white people to do white people harm, like you have white people going around, looking for black people to do them harm? Hell no. You don't see no black guys running into a white church to shoot up the white church like you saw in Sutherland Springs, like you saw with Dylon Ruth in the AME church. You don't see that. Like I said before, when black people go out here and they commit acts of violence that look anything remotely like that, it's usually people who were fucking with them. In the black community, if somebody shoots at you, the first thing other black people are going to ask you is, what did you do? We don't really do random acts of violence, which is why, let's face it, even the white people listening to this video right now, you are not looking over your shoulder for a black person to attack you strictly because you're white. You'll be looking over your shoulder for a black person to rob you or carjack you, if you so happen to be out there at an ATM at 3 o'clock in the morning, because we all know that nobody takes money out the ATM at 3 o'clock in the morning for anything positive, for anything good, right? But I'm just saying, you get, I see white people, they talk about what gets ignored in the media. And what I notice is I don't see a whole bunch of outrage when white cops kill other white people, or white cops go out here and they're body slamming, other white people. And I mean, this is just human nature. It's shitty, but it's just the way it is. People tend not to care about shit that goes on in-house. They tend not to care. When it comes to, things that happen across racial lines, that's when everybody, all of a sudden, they want to be an activist. That's when everybody wants to come out the woodwork and look what they did to us. I saw that video, that cop that had in Arizona he had the dust cover that said "fuck you," right? And shot that man in the hallway. They arrested the girl. They just told the girl, okay, turn around, walk towards us backwards, and they cuffed her. The white guy, he was like, crawl towards me, cross your legs, do the hokey pokey, turn yourself around. I mean, he was giving him all type of fucked up contradictory commands. The guy was scared shitless, and then what did he do? He blasted him. And then what happened with that cop? I'm pretty sure last time I checked, he got acquitted. And I didn't see too many white people running around screaming, outrage. I saw a couple YouTube videos here and there, but I didn't see too many, with the type of anger and vitriol that I see anytime, there's a black person that has a bad interaction with a white cop, and then the black person ends up dead. That's what's so crazy. The black person is dead, and white people are out there like just raging and shit, like blue lives matter. I'm like, you do realize the black guy died in this. It wasn't even the white cop that died in this. It's the black guy that died in this. Aside from the fact that the number one killer of cops are white people. You got that guy out in Pennsylvania that they found. I think he escaped the prison, or he had the guy that what did he do? He was he ambushed the police, the state troopers in Pennsylvania. Just Google that shit. And then they found him. He was hiding in a barn somewhere. You had that guy in Idaho. He ambushed the police officers. Nobody was screaming Blue Lives Matter then. What's so funny is I remember when that post came up, and the guy, he came into the comment section, and I was in the comment section. A guy comes in the comment section, and he's like, Blue Lives Matter. He assumed that it was a black guy that had killed this Idaho state trooper or cop or whatever. And another white guy in the comment section had to inform him, yeah, you might want to do your research because the shooter was white. You might want to do your research. You don't see black people running around trying to blow up synagogues and shit like that. And quiet as is kept, there's a lot of black people who feel they got a lot of beef with Jewish people. But, you don't see black people running around doing no shit like that. It's white people that run around doing stuff like that. But anyway, I'm getting off topic. I'm just saying, law enforcement officers should only operate underneath one flag, and that's the American flag. Point blank, period. The flag to us is no different than, what it has become because of who have co-opted it. What the thin blue line flag has become is just another symbol of white supremacy. It's no different than the Confederate flag. And I'm saying, I know this as African Americans. That's how I feel when I see it. Before I used to not think anything of it. But then when you look at the people who always are like, Blue Lives Matter, and they're always just toting the thin blue line. I even know some guys that even got the thin blue line tattoo on their arm. Now, one or two of them, they actually want to be a law enforcement officer. They actually want to be a cop. So I don't knock them for that. But then, there's some other ones that it's like, do you ever side with the black guy? Like, can you watch a video and watch, a cop do some fucked up shit? I mean, just blatant as hell. The black guy's getting shot at, or the black guy's getting killed, and then you say, that was fucked up. That cop should not be an officer. Like, you don't get the same people who run around screaming Blue Lives Matter. It's like they cannot empathize with the black person. It's like when you see John Crawford III in Ohio when he was in the Walmart buying a damn airsoft gun. You know what I mean? And the cop comes in there and just immediately starts blasting him, shoots him with the 5.56. Or Tamir Rice, who was a little kid playing in a park, with a toy gun. Right? White kids, they can play with toy guns all day. Freaking cowboys and Indians and all that shit. Playing with BB guns, all that stuff. I mean, have you ever seen A Christmas Carol? You're gonna shoot your eye out. Right? But when it comes to black people, man, this is white people, they just don't feel that way. And I think that's the number one thing that pisses black people off. I don't even think it's the cops. People can understand that, cops are going to fuck up. It's just like any other job. People can fuck up. People can make mistakes. They should be held accountable. It's just that simple. But I think what pisses black people off more than anything, it has black people just out here just foaming at the mouth or, responding with, fuck all white people, is the lack of compassion when these sort of situations go down, and the knee-jerk reaction of the way that white people will just quickly go to defend the police officer. Yes, I saw that black girl whose brother robbed the freaking dollar store, and she was up there talking about, what did she say? She said some stupid ass. What did she say? She was like, something like, so what if he robbed the store? Like, I'm like, bitch. You know what I'm saying? No, your brother was robbing the store, and he got his ass shot and got his ass killed, and that's what the fuck he get. You know what I mean? And there's enough black people who spoke on that shit because we can't stand that shit either. Ray Ray and Pookie terrorizes other black people more than Ray Ray and Pookie terrorizes y'all. I don't know where y'all get the attitude, where you act like you're the number one victims of black thuggery and criminals and shit. Like, black people are the number one victim. You can't scream black on black violence and then turn around and act like you all are the number one victims of violence at the hands of black people. No, other black people are. Just like as it pertains to ISIS, the number one victims of ISIS are other Muslims. Y'all see the news? You ever watch the news and they sit there and they say 102 people are dead due to a suicide bomber who walked into a mosque and blew it up. A mosque and blew it up in Iraq, or in Syria or whatever, right? Walked into a mosque and blew it up. And they don't just target synagogues and freaking, churches. As a matter of fact, I don't think we've ever heard of them walking into a church in the West and blowing it up on some, suicidal, vest type of shit. The closest thing, was, the most damaging was, I'd say, that truck driver in Nice, France, and the guys that were in France that, shot up the place with the AK-47s and shot up that rock concert or whatever. We haven't seen anything like that in the States. In the States, in the US of A, especially with all the access to firearms, which again, I'm not against, but I'm just saying the reality is the number one crazies in America are white men. Those are the number one crazies. Those are the randomly shoot you up in the mall crazies. Those are the we were just trying to watch a movie crazies. And nobody really likes to call that out. They want to go and they want to talk about Ahmed. They want to go and they want to talk about, some black thug that was carjacking or some shit like that. Nobody wants to talk about white men, both middle-aged white men and young white men, who are the biggest threat to a lot of people's survivability. So it's just kind of funny how you have that contrast where, in one breath, it's, we see what it is. We see who's doing a lot of the mass shootings and stuff like that. And then in the next breath, it's like white men are heroes because look at these cops and Blue Lives Matter and, So it's like you can't really address what some of the underlying issues are. I've made my guesses as to why you have a lot more white male shooters, that we've seen over the last couple of years. I think that you have this assault on masculinity across the board, not just white male masculinity. I think you have a changing economy. You got the opioid epidemic. You have this attack on, positive male identities, which I guess I just said with the whole attacking on males. But then you have the changing markets, the feminism and all that, right? Watch the feminism jump up in there. How does feminism have to do with that? Again, attacking boys, screaming toxic masculinity, rape culture on everything, to where the boys out here, they're trying to reclaim their manhood through violence or whatever, or they go out here and they find, something or someone or some group to blame for why they're not where they wanted to be in life. And I think that white men are the least likely to be able to handle that. Because they've been promised so much. They believe it's their country. They're not used to delayed gratification. They're told that no matter what, hey, you're a white guy, you'll be all right. Or at the very least, you're going to be better off than all the other people, which is just totally unrealistic. It's about as unrealistic as the United States thinking arrogantly that it was going to remain the dominant manufacturing force in the world. Completely overlooking the way that, again, the white oligarchy are the ones that have taken the jobs overseas. Where is your Apple computer made? Where is your iPhone made? They're made in China. Whose fault is that? Right? Back when GM was freaking laying off auto workers, saying, hey, we can't pay you that much money. They had stocks in Japanese companies. They had stocks in both Mitsubishi and Suzuki back in the early 1970s. They had stocks in those companies, and those were their number one competitors, right? They had the whole the oil embargo and everything else. So those were their number one competitors. The reason why Lexus and Honda and all those other manufacturers, like what was that car, the collabo that they did? What was it, the Datsun or something like that? It was like half Mitsubishi. They had like two different cars. They just called them two different, they relabel it, call it something else. Right? And then bring it over. So like, again, as I've always tried to tell white people, class trumps race. Before you all were distracted by race, it was kings, nobles, and peasants. And many of the people that go the hardest in the paint when it comes to these racial conversations are people who are descendant of the peasants and currently now still exist in the peasant class. If we wanted to draw parallels between today and, back in, feudal Europe, it's the same thing. All them damn castles and shit like that. Yeah, guess who didn't get to live in the castle? Guess who lived outside the castle, where they had the little wooden walls and shit like that. Yeah, that was y'all. Y'all was out there, on some Braveheart shit with bad teeth and stinky drawers and shit. But, you can't explain that shit to white people. Yeah, I'm just... It's like, y'all ain't fooling us, man. Like, we already know. Like, it's just, y'all just reinforce the idea that many of us already think that white people are fucked up. Like, y'all just reinforce that shit when, we see the lack of compassion. We see the lack of logic when it comes to the interaction with, police officers. It's like, does it kill you just to acknowledge, like, hey, that officer did some fucked up shit? That was fucked up. That officer should be kicked out. He should be fired, does it pain you that much? No, we must stick by officers no matter what, right? That's what y'all say. But then, again, Beto O'Rourke goes up there and says he's going to take your guns. Step on my lawn, copper, and you'll be seeing a bunch of hot lead. And it's like, really? Really? And now all of a sudden, is you going to see hot lead? 1776 will be upon you. From my cold, dead hands, the tree of liberty must be refreshed with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Right? Give me liberty or give me death. Right? All that because he said that he was going to confiscate your guns. What happened to Blue Lives Matter? Now all of a sudden you talking about tyranny. Who the hell do you think you would be shooting at if tyranny were to pop off tomorrow? It ain't gonna be black people. It ain't gonna be black people. It ain't gonna be Chinese people. It ain't gonna be Mexicans. It ain't gonna be Muslims. It's gonna be the people who look like you. Again, with great power comes great responsibility. I don't know what people don't understand about that. They run around screaming personal responsibility. And that's another thing. I always talk about that too. I just feel like a lot of white people have personally responsibility themselves into a corner. That's another reason why you see all the opioid epidemic and suicide and all that other shit. They done personally responsibility themselves into a corner. Conservative themselves to death. We don't need any social programs because we show personal responsibility. And they do that shit to their own detriment. I mean, the reality is that when it comes to being Republican and conservative, the balance is somewhere in the middle. Do people need to be personally responsible? Yeah, sure they do. Absolutely. I have that problem with the black community, with people going out there and having kids out of wedlock that they can't fucking take care of. I'm like, the white man is not pushing you into your girl to pump her up full of a baby. You can tell me about job discrimination. I'll hear you on that because I know that goes on, right? Group economics, tribalism. I know that goes on, but he ain't making you fuck your girl and pump her up full of a baby and use no condom, right? So, when it comes to, white folks, it's like, yeah, personal responsibility is needed, but at the same time, social programs are also needed, to a degree. I mean, white people got on their feet through social programs. When you look at stuff like, the Homestead Act and the New Deal, right? Those were handouts, but white people don't call them handouts. They just say, hey, we needed those, right? The way that farmers are being subsidized, out there in the Midwest to not grow crops, right? So that the government, I don't even know all the reasons why they do that, to stabilize the price of certain crops, right? To keep the farmers happy and keep maintaining their vote. I don't know how all that type of stuff works. But people definitely are out here, manipulating the markets. I mean, look at places where, there's a low population. You'll have an all white community, low population, and then they'll build a prison and then hire people from the local community, which are majority white, to now be, correction officers. So now they got jobs in the prison, right? So now wait, what's the number one job in this town? Oh, everybody works in the correctional facility. Oh, okay, yeah. So that's where you're getting your bread and butter. So they're all making, just like slavery, making money off of the backs of, black people getting locked up for bullshit, nonviolent felonies. The black guy's over in the hood trying to make money, so he's selling drugs, right? Then that comes full circle back to the white people, right? Because their kids are the ones that are getting hooked on the opioids and they OD, right? So it's like everybody's getting fucked. I don't know why people just don't look at the problem like we're all connected, like the movie Crash. Right? It's like if you dealt with the poverty, then your kid probably wouldn't be doing opioids and he wouldn't have died of opioids, right? I don't know why people don't see, the aspect of that. It's like I was thinking the other day, I look at these sort of prison to pipeline, pipeline to prison situations they have going on in the inner city. And, in one breath, yeah, I get it. White people, they don't want black people to be able to economically compete with them, right? That's why they burnt down Tulsa and Rosewood and Elaine, Arkansas, right? I get it, right? But at the same time, right, when they talk about where their tax dollars are going, I'm like, think about it, right? How much does it cost to keep somebody in prison? I don't know, right? Let's say somebody goes to prison for murder, because they live in the high crime area. They were selling drugs. They had to kill the rival drug dealer. So they go to jail for murder, right? Black on black violence. They go to jail for murder, right? They get 30 years. How much does it cost to house that person for 30 years? What's the alternative? The alternative would be like when black people talk about either reparations for slavery or they talk about funding for inner city schools, better funding for inner city schools. If that same kid got solid funding for his school, which probably cost significantly less than all the money spent trying to warehouse these people in prison, then not only could that young black man go out and get a decent job, then he could contribute to the national GDP and, the overall, markets and whatnot. And then you wouldn't have that problem. He'd be contributing to the economy as opposed to taking away from the economy. Right. But what I'm starting to realize is it's not even about taking away or giving to the economy. It's just about having the circulation of money. It's the same thing that many of you white men listening to this video right now recognize when it comes to the freaking child custody and the divorce courts. Y'all know y'all get raped in the divorce courts. That's where white supremacy or white privilege most certainly does not work for white men. It doesn't work for us either. Shit. You go into court, she taking half, she getting the house, she getting the car. It's not about keeping the family together or anything else like that. It's all about an exchange of money from one hand to the next. You go and you got to pay your wife $800 in friggin' child support, and she doesn't get all that $800. No, by the time she gets the money, she may get $500, $300 went to the court somehow, some way, register fees and all type of other bullshit. So they took their cut. So the whole thing is to take a cut, and that's what happens with these white people, with these prisons out there in the middle of nowhere, that are surrounding, these towns surrounding these prisons. Y'all taking y'all cut, right? You don't care about the black bodies that get locked up in there and whatnot, right? And I'm saying the crazy thing is the people who are taking the cut may be the people who live in that local town, but who's actually paying for that? The white people who don't live anywhere near that town. They're the ones that are actually feeling the sting of their tax dollars having to pay for that prison because of an unfair justice system. Right? And I mean, we live in a capitalist society, so it's like, well, what would you rather have? Like, is the idea of having to compete against black people in the economic marketplace just that bad that you would rather spend an insane amount of money keeping them locked up and keeping them in prison and spending your tax dollars that way than having, thriving, intact black communities that might actually produce something that can contribute greatly to America? I don't know. Maybe there's some black kid that's like a genius and he can make a freaking warp drive and we could have faster than light travel, some way. He's like the 2020 version of like George Washington Carver or some shit. But we don't get that. We don't get the little black Einstein because he's growing up in poverty, and instead of, going to MIT or some shit, he ends up being a freaking local drug dealer. And he's not only a local drug dealer, he's a damn good local drug dealer. And he's the one that's pushing all the fentanyl-laced opioids through your community, which is why your little daughter, Susie, fucking just had an OD. Right? You see how that shit plays out? But y'all don't see it that way. Y'all just totally disconnected. Yeah, blue lives matter. Keep those niggers down. So it's like, I can't deal with the type of stupidity that you have out here. I don't know how to get people to stop thinking like that. That's just how they think. The real people screwing them over are the people who look like them. I mean, first off, it wasn't black people that started the opioid epidemic. It was the Sackler family, which is a white family. They're the ones that came up with the Oxycontin and all that other shit, and now they're getting their pants sued off of them. Just like Oklahoma sued some big friggin' opioid pharmaceutical company. Hell, this is one time where maybe black people did have black privilege and it benefited them, because arguably some people have pointed out that the reason why black people didn't get hooked on the opioid epidemic is because white doctors wouldn't prescribe black people opioids. Because they felt that black people, because of, the post-crack era, they felt that black people were more inclined to be, junkies or become addicted or were prone to addiction. So when the black person was in pain, they would be like, oh, well, here's some acetaminophen, right? Where the white person, they go and, they get injured, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, do you know that you can have, get opioids for heel spurs? You know what I mean? They were just pushing that shit on y'all. But with the black people, they wasn't pushing that on black people. On top of the fact that a lot of black people, again, since we disproportionately live in poverty, a lot of black people don't have that type of health care where they could get the good shit. They don't got that type of health care. So that kept us out of doctors' offices. Aside from the fact you got other reasons why black people don't go to the doctors, like the Tuskegee experiment, where white folks were basically injecting black people full of syphilis, causing them to give it to their relatives and whatnot, and then looking at the effects, watching the effects, on some Nazi shit. So again, we got the history to support. The black people that want to run around and say that white people are just the terriblest most people, whatever. Like we got the history to fucking support that. We got documentation to support the shit. Now do I walk around, wake up every morning like, I hate whitey, I want death to whitey, kill white babies? Like, no. Ain't nobody sitting around fucking thinking like that. But I'll be damned if a white person going to sit there and try to act like, black people are just, unjustifiably angry. That they're unjustifiably feeling some type of way. Like, I'm like, you can kiss my ass with that bullshit. We got receipts. So, I don't know. It's just, some shit to think about, for the white people that are, that are at least somewhat open-minded and aren't just like, they're just like, he said this, triggered, I'm triggered. Like you're acting like the very snowflakes that you claim that you're not, because you just don't want to be, introduced to anything that challenges what you currently believe. I think that's part of the reason why we have such a breakdown in politics and culture in America right now. Like I said before, back in the day, you used to have brilliant people that, get on a panel and they debate and intellectualize, your Thomas Sowells, your Malcolm X's, your Christopher Hitchens, your Richard Dawkins, you know what I mean? And they used to just go up there and hash it out. Your James Baldwins, that shit don't go on no more. Now it's just sound bites. Nobody chops it up anymore. They got this new show on YouTube. What's it called? London something, where they go up there and they just ask people all these deep ass questions and shit, and they be breaking some stuff down. The only other person that I've seen kind of fill the shoes of like being somewhat, the intellectual of the masses would be Jordan Peterson. Other than that, it's like you don't really have a whole bunch of people that are up there, really challenging. Some of the, especially shit coming from the far left. I do think that the far left is a pretty big threat at this point. I just think they're too radical. I don't particularly care for conservatives and a lot of shit they push and the Bible thumpers and all. I don't particularly care for it, but I definitely find myself being more of a traditionalist. Again, without all the white Jesus justification, but I'm just saying more of a traditionalist about structure, because I can understand how structure works. I understand if you have a community, it needs to be patriarchally oriented, and the men that are the forefathers need to create businesses and opportunities for the younger men in order to, sustain that order. It's about money and resources and whatnot. And I know that when you take money out of a community, that's where you're going to see social dysfunction. It has nothing to do with spiritual morality and, they need Christ and all that other bullshit. Take the money out of a community. I don't care how many goddamn churches you got. You are going to see social decay and you are going to see problems. Period. I don't care how you want to sit there and say, no, they need the Lord. Yeah, all that coping mechanism shit. And how long is that going to last? If you don't have some jobs and some gainful employment for some young men, I don't care, black, white, whatever, you're going to have some problems in a generation or two. That's just what it is. And I don't know why, for the life of me, I can't get most white men to be on the same page as me and understanding that everybody needs fucking jobs. Them including us. As black people. I mean, they kill me with that crap. Black guy, you should be able to do with $3 what it takes me to do with $20. I'm like, nigga, are you get the fuck out of my face, man, with your fucked up math. All that, what's good for me is not good for you. There's a lot of white people, they operate on that shit. well, I deserve it because I'm a white man. I'm like, oh, here we go. Here we fucking go. And again, a lot of the people who think like this are not the sharpest tools in the drawer. Just like them people that just recently, like, what was it, today? They went out there in Mississippi and, got their, Ku Klux Klan, rally, and they having it in front of an Emmett Till sign. Go ahead, Google it, look it up. I'm not lying. Again, we got receipts. And they go up there and they got cameras all over it. They made the sign bulletproof because obviously it was getting shot. Like, think about how much of a dumbass you got to be. This is a sign about a freaking 14-year-old boy, I believe Emmett Till was, that was murdered because they thought he whistled at a white woman. Right? He was murdered in 1950, was it 55? Because they thought he whistled at a white woman. And yet, these people who weren't even born, and they were born way after 1955, probably born in the late 70s or 80s, they out there, the freaking what, trampling on a dead boy's grave? Like, what is the symbolism of that shit? You know what I mean? Like, what is it? You just want to trigger a bunch of black people? You go up there and get in front of the freaking Emmett Till? Like, I'm like, really? You're trampling on the grave of a 14-year-old boy who was murdered? Really? Like, it's like, these people are dumbasses, man. It's like, you just get to a point where it's just like, you can't reason with these people. All I can do as a black American is strap up. I'm glad to be in a country where I can defend myself. Despite all the shit that black people may talk about America, if I had to go and I had to create my own country, there's many things I would take from the American Constitution. I'd take most of it. But again, it's about the application. It's about, how the law is applied. Is the law applied evenly? Is the law applied justly? That's what makes the difference. It's not that it's like what I try to tell black people about: stand your ground. Stand your ground is not the problem. The problem is the application of the law. Now, still, I have yet to see where there has been a particular improper application of the law that has worked against black people's favor. The Marissa Alexander case is not a good case because Marissa Alexander, with, claimed that she was abused by her husband. She freaking shot at her husband's head. No, she freaking left the house, went and got a gun, retrieved it from her car, and then came back into the danger zone and then shot it at her husband's head. That is why Marissa Alexander, stand your ground, did not apply, and why when George Zimmerman, even though George Zimmerman is a piece of shit and a coward, applied to George Zimmerman. That's why it applied. That's why there is the difference. You know what I'm saying? So, again, it's like, if black people are going to, challenge, white people that say some stupid shit, you gotta do your homework. You can't come out there half-cocked. Don't be coming out there half-cocked like they come out there half-cocked. You got to do your homework. So, anyway, that's pretty much all I wanted to say, all I wanted to get off my chest. Again, dear white people, we know the code words. We know, how you all process information. We know you more than you all know us, quiet as is kept. Because you all are the dominant society. We're forced to know everything about you and how you operate and what you do and how you like your eggs sunny side up and how you love mayonnaise on your sandwiches and how you love, your half and half lemonade. Like we know all about that. Okay. We know how you love Chick-fil-A. We know how you love Chipotle. We know, if we wanted to commit terrorist attacks, we would knock up a Chick-fil-A or a Chipotle because we know that's where y'all hang out. So we know you more than you know us. Okay. So, I don't know why white people try to play these stupid ass games. I'm like, we're forced to know you in order to survive in America. So, like, please stop it with just this all this fake ass code shit. Like, you're like running around like white people in Boston calling black people Mondays. Like, we don't know what you're talking about. Like, stop it. Anyway, that's all I got to say. New Jersey gun laws out.